the premier sports talk radio, it's Tony's Takes.
Here we go.
Welcome back to another great episode of Tony's Takes live right here on YouTube. For the best show in sports talk radio, it's Tony's Takes. And of course, I am not alone in the studio today. Sitting next to me is my co-host, Jimmy D. Jim, hello.
Tony, big show today.
Huge. It's a big show, and for many reasons. The NCAA tournament, it's been concluded. It has concluded, is the better word to say. The NCAA tournament is over. Baylor is your champions. And I'm going to be honest with you, Jim. I was rooting for Gonzaga the whole way. But guess what? You can't win them all. And Gonzaga comes up short once again. And I might just stop betting on them going forward. Until they win, I never bet on them, per se. I never put a spread down on them. But going forward, I might have to be a little reluctant to pick Gonzaga. And that's just going to be a personal decision of mine. Sorry. They are the type of team, Villanova's done it. I can believe that Villanova's going to win again if they're not, riddled with injuries and they're going to play really well. I can't do that with Gonzaga until they win. So we're going to get into that later in today's show. We're going to talk more about Baylor being the NCAA champions. However, the most important thing for us to remember is that the Philadelphia Phillies, yes, the Philadelphia Phillies, the team who ESPN put at like 18th or 17th in their power rankings heading into this season, well, they've changed they've changed some minds already, and we're only 1 week into the season, and the Philadelphia Phillies, well, they just look good. They look better than everyone else. It's why they're sitting atop of the entire NL and of possibly the entire MLB. I think they have the best record in baseball, and they're tied with, I think, the Cincinnati Reds. Jim,
Correct.
Can you confirm?
Yep, that's correct.
And so, as Phillies fans, and Jim put this in the write-up for today, and it's why we're really opening up with it because it's so exciting. Can the Phillies sustain this? Are they really that good? Are they the best team in the MLB? Let me run down a couple facts and what the Phillies have been able to do so far this year. Who stood out in the first week of play, the first 6 games of baseball? Who for the Philadelphia Phillies has really stood out? But first, before I get into this, please, if you're listening to us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the show. Double-click the notification bell. That way you get notified every time we go live. That way you're in the loop. In addition to that, please follow us on Twitter at Tonys_takes. We hit 50 followers. Thank you to everyone who followed us. If you haven't followed us, help us get to 100. Just keep spreading the news. And that's the other thing about Tony's Takes. You got to tell your friends about it. Me saying, email the mailbag, or follow us at Twitter. That doesn't help Tony's Takes grow. I need you, the fan, to tell 3 people who you know who like local sports or who like St. Joe's basketball, either or, and tell them to listen to Tony's Takes. Say this is an alternative to the corporate media that run live radio in Philadelphia. This is an independent live radio outlet, and it is something different. It is different than just a podcast. We are just good, better than anyone else. And that's because we do it different. And so if you could tell 2 friends, 3 friends, it would really help spread the show. Because I know people, Jim, you know what the people tell me every time? They tell me they love the show. Every person who I've showed it to for the first time ever, they go, I love the show. They just never heard about it.
Sure. Yeah, I get that all the time too. And all we need is just, like you said, 2 or 3 people.
Tell 2 or 3 people you know.
Get them to listen just one time, and they'll probably be hooked, to be honest.
It's a Tony guarantee that they're going to be hooked. But you know what I'm hooked on? Phillies baseball. And so I'm going to lay out a couple things that stood out to me, and then I want to get your opinion. We can do a little back and forth. How's that sound?
Love it.
Excellent. Because this is Tony's Takes. I got to give you my take before we start the show. Are you kidding me? Okay, so this is a couple things that stood out to me for the first 5 or 6 games of Phillies baseball. The first thing is we swept the Braves, right? This is supposed to be the second best team in the NL behind the Dodgers, who were the favorites to win the whole thing again. And we beat them 3-0. The Dodgers bats, they don't look good. They look shaky, and they couldn't hit a single thing off of either our starting pitchers or our bullpen. And we swept them 3-0. And the big standout for those 3 games was Zach Wheeler. I don't think anyone's going to disagree. I don't think Jim's going to disagree with this statement. Zach Wheeler is a Cy Young candidate. Especially if he plays like that, just give him the award. 10 strikeouts, 7 innings, and 1 hit. 0 walks. That is Cy Young material. And if he can do that throughout the year, which I'm hoping he can, he deserves to be a Cy Young candidate. Very few people can do that. And against the Braves, now maybe you could say, oh, well, the Braves bats, they just weren't up to par. They're still a little slow. It's the beginning of the season. Teams who start out hot in the MLB, well, they just, they fall apart. First of all, I don't buy that. For me, in baseball, I think getting out to a good start is crucial. It is hard to climb back when there are so many games in a season. It is hard to climb back when your division opponent, who's played you already in the beginning of the season, is up on you by 10 division wins. That matters. And sure, it doesn't indicate that you're going to be a hot team in the playoffs, but to get those early wins, it just gives you a little bit of a buffer for you to play with confidence for the rest of the season. So I don't want the Phillies to spend all their energy being good right now. Of course not. But it's better to be this team out in front, a little bit comfortable, playing really well early in the season. They're not playing great. Me and Jim are about to name 4 things that could improve on this team still. But they're playing like they're in good mid-season form in May. And I think that it proves that they could maybe hold this type of play all season long, which makes them a 95-win team. And that's exciting. And I think they can keep it up because the starting pitchers who are playing well, they are pretty good. And the bullpen can close out games. The Mets, who hit much better against the Phillies throughout their series, the Phillies went 2-1 against the Mets, minus the Velasquez game. This guy's got to get out of town. But minus the Velasquez game, they beat a good Mets team whose bats were swinging, who were getting runs against Nola. They had to pull Nola early, pulled him in the 4th inning. That's how good the Mets bats were. They are not a bad hitting team. And we're going to play some clips later that show that. But, when the Mets hit well, we hit better. JT, an absolute bomb into center field. Didi, I don't even want to try to pronounce his name because I'm going to just stutter it up. But Didi hits one into center field as well. Now, that was in the losing game, but at least his bat's getting a little hot. JT's bat is hot. Hoskins is getting better. Bryce had 2 runs the other night. The team is waking up. And even against DeGrom, they beat DeGrom.
First ever loss recorded in Philadelphia for DeGrom.
There you go. That's an important stat. So that game, yeah, of course the bats aren't going to be crazy good, but we beat them. And then, in all reality, if you look at the Velasquez game, we had sat Hoskins and McCutchen. And was it Segura as well? They sat all the right-handers.
Yes.
Because they wanted to try something new against the Mets. So even that game, that loss, half of it's on the fact that we didn't play our full starting lineup. I keep hitting the table. Our full starting lineup. That's important. So, yeah, Velasquez stinks, but Zach Wheeler is really good. Bryce Harper, he's still trying to find his rhythm. He played well yesterday. The bats are lining up. JT hits a bomb. That is noteworthy. And the bullpen, this is my final take before I let Jim jump in. The bullpen's fine. I see nothing to worry about right now. That doesn't mean that we're just going to ignore it and say it's not a problem anymore. Good teams are attentive to all portions of the roster. But the bullpen looks good. It's the starting pitching. We need to find one more guy. And we need to find one other guy who can hit home runs consistently. That's what the Phillies really need to look forward to. And it was something that stood out in both of these games. Jim?
Yeah, so question of the day is, are the Phillies the best team in baseball, right?
Yeah, that is the question.
I'm not willing to go there just yet. Okay?
You could.
I know this sounds weird, but the Angels look really good. The Astros are also 5-1. The Dodgers have a lot of depth in their bullpen, in their starters. I'm actually amazed that the Dodgers aren't hitting that well right now, but it's the same thing with the Dodgers that it is with the Phillies for me, is that, okay, well, if we're not doing certain things now, yet we're still winning, well, then we're only going to go up from here, and we're pretty high to begin with. So, like you said, it's a great way to, if you can start the season 5-1, and you're only going to get better from that point, then let's go. Who knows what this team can do. Now, 95 wins, I don't know. That would be really, really great if they could do that, but who knows if that's possible.
Steven Daniels goes, can't let Vinny Velo. He's talking about Vinny. He's talking about Velasquez, says can't let him pitch for more than one inning. Steve, I'm going to have to disagree. You can't let him pitch at all. Velasquez should start packing his bags. We've seen him for 4 years, folks. 4 years. I'm done. If I was running the team, which they should let me, I'm done with Velasquez. Get him out of town now. It is unacceptable to have him on the team if he's going to pitch like that. I don't know if he's damaged goods. I don't know if a new scene is what he needs. But he don't need the Phillies anymore. And we don't need him. And he better pack up. Am I being too harsh, Jim?
No, you're not. And I think that, it's due now for Vinny Velo to...
We've given him 3 years.
I just think that I do think he's fine for an inning. I don't think that he can go further than that. And I think they need to realize that once batters see him, this has been the statistic on him for years now, is that the third time around in the lineup, batters crush him. They hit like 600 or something like that against him. So he needs to just be one inning type of guy. And that's it. That's it, max. No more than that.
It was funny. First of all, prior to him blowing up the way he did, not in a good way. What's his name? McCarthy, the guy who does the play-by-play.
Tom McCarthy. Yep.
He was saying they were going off. They were praising Velasquez, going, "Wow, like guys, and when they're in the box, they say that Velasquez's 94 miles feels like 100." I'm like, okay, and then they go, he's a really good pitcher. Especially when he finally puts the ball in the right place. In the first inning, he played really well. He was putting the ball in the right place. And then the next inning comes around, and he can't put it in the strike zone. Walking guys. His fastball, well, they must have thought it felt like 100, because when you throw 100 miles down the middle, as long as you make contact, the ball is going out of the park. It doesn't matter. The faster he throws it, the more exit velocity it's going to have.
Sure. Now, Tony, I know that you're very positive about the Phillies.
I'm extremely positive.
You want to say the Phillies are the best team in the MLB, best team in the NL.
They're the best team in the NL East.
I don't even know if they're the best team in the NL East yet.
They are.
I can't say that. The problem is, all right, so one, I said this last week, the Mets don't scare me. The Marlins look really bad to begin with.
Okay. So
the Braves, I think that we are better than.
Oh, okay. Where am I missing?
I haven't seen the Nationals play that much. We've only seen 3 games from them against the Braves.
Now, that's my team. No, the Braves are my team.
Exactly. You don't even remember what your team is.
I have so many teams. I just like winners.
The Nationals are about to play a 3-game series against the Dodgers. That'll be the real test. That'll let us know where the Nationals actually are, if they can actually play against that team.
The Nationals are a team where Strasburg doesn't play a lot. Scherzer is getting older, and we haven't seen him play. They just had 10 guys come off COVID, and we know what COVID does to people. And so I think that's going to have a prolonged effect, at least into the month of May. And on top of that, they don't have that many batters outside Soto, who everyone's saying is we have a clip that I'm about to play it right after this. It talks about all this. Yeah, Juan Soto's a good player, but let's not forget Anthony Rendon is the reason that team won a national title. Soto had his part, and he played a very important role. But I don't think I would be as scared as him as everyone else is. I watched him play. I watched every game of the World Series. When he went up to the box, I didn't think he was going to be a guaranteed hit every time. He's not that great. He's a good player. He showed up when he had to. He hit some important runs. But the Nats just don't. What, Turner's not even on the Nats anymore. Didn't he leave?
No, I don't think he's on the Nats anymore.
And he was their leadoff hitter. Guy
We
has
still
wheels.
we still don't know anything about them now.
I know some things. I just said them to you.
But it's only been 3 games, and that's
It's been 6. Well, for the Nats,
they've
it's
only
been
played 3. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. We still have to see what their form looks like. I still think the Braves are a good team, even though we swept them. We swept them a couple years ago, and they won 97 games that year to win the NL East. So I still think that there are some worries about those 2 teams. The 3 teams are the Phillies, Nats, and the Braves. You're not going to hear anything from the Mets or the Marlins. I think the Mets are junk, and I don't think that Francisco Lindor signing and that Marcus Stroman coming back is really going to change anything about them.
The people at MLB TV would differ from you, Jim, and so I'm going to play. This is clip 1. This is from MLB TV talking about the Mets and the division as a whole. It's a minute-long clip. I think it's really important, so everyone hold on tight as we play. This is MLB TV.
To the point of underperforming, the highest weighted runs created plus in the majors last year among teams, it was the Mets and Dodgers tied at 122. So the Mets had an equal offense to the World Series champions, who we saw demolish teams with their bats. So I do think that there's been an element of underperforming, and I think a lot of it comes from the pitching beyond DeGrom. But I absolutely think that they can go toe-to-toe with the Braves. And I think the Braves have their own sets of questions. They were really helped by Marcell Ozuna's offense in 2020. We don't know what team he's going to be on, and it probably won't be the Braves. They are getting back their ace or co-ace in Mike Soroka. But I do think that the Mets absolutely can be one of the best teams in the National League and certainly can win the division. But I think the division is very tough. I think that the other teams are a cut below, but you can make an argument for any of those teams, especially with potential expanded playoffs or whatever else, at least making the postseason. The Marlins are a bit of a wild card, not to use the actual phrase, because we don't really know how much of what happened in 2020 will necessarily carry over in terms of how good they were. But the Nationals have Juan Soto, who's one of the 3 best players in the majors, at least position players, and the Phillies have Bryce Harper. The Phillies have good pitching in Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, so I think those teams have more questions, but I think any of these teams could make a run, which is interesting. This is why the Mets are loading.
The calculations based on my mind, I was able to calculate the win percentage of all these teams, and I've calculated that the division is equal. Yes, that is correct. And now I'm going to turn over to my calculus professor, who's going to tell us how the division is still in the Phillies' hands. Professor Jim, can you please explain how my calculations are correct?
So in that same video, they talk about the Mets having the best players on paper. If you
yes, my calculations on paper say that they are the best.
And then you say everybody's a cut below. You hear her say that. She said everybody's a cut below the Mets. Have you seen the Phillies roster? And this was before the Mets even had Francisco Lindor. That video is from before then. So the Mets roster has gotten better since then, and I still don't feel like they were a cut above us. Not even now. If you take a look at the rosters, now. Look at our lineup. It's the same lineup that we've said for the last couple of years is an intimidating lineup for every pitcher to go up against. And you've seen it over and over again, some of these comeback wins that we've had in the first 6 games where pitchers are just running out of steam, where you have they have bases loaded and they hit Bryce Harper, and then JT Realmuto hits a single through the infield, and you have Alec Boehm hitting 3-run home runs and Rhys Hoskins going 3 for 3 or whatever, 3 for 4 with 2 doubles and a home run. It's scary. It's not easy for these pitchers to go and face these batters.
Scared. We got the people in the chat, and if you're listening to Tony's takes, we read all the takes in the chat. And so, Jim, I want to read them real quick, and then you can react to them. As always, Evan Lehman goes, Juan Soto is overrated. And Eric Franklin goes, I agree with Jim. The Mets are overrated, but it's easy to forget they'll have Carrasco. Sorry, I'm bad at spot reading. And Syndergaard coming back in the short and medium term, and that will really help their rotation.
I have a question for Eric Franklin. Does he still think that Syndergaard is like Thor, like he used to be? Or I've seen a regression in Syndergaard, and I don't think that he's the same player he used to be.
But DeGrom's the same player. DeGrom's the same guy we've always known. Man, that guy throws 100 like it's no problem. Shows up first inning, throws 100.
Same guy, but guess what? He recorded his first loss in Philadelphia ever, and I think that's a sign of what this team is willing to do to get the wins.
But according to my calculations, the Mets are the best on paper.
I don't want to hear that anymore. The Mets are going to finish 4th in the league.
Jimmy, my data scientists say that the eye test doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, I think the eye test does work.
Jimmy thinks he's just some macho guy. Yo, I'm from Philadelphia. What are you, country? Dude, from Philadelphia, we only care about the eye test. We're just winners.
Well, if you see a team having fun and winning games, and they're not actually even hitting the ball that well to begin with.
They aren't, and that's why they're the best team in baseball. They're not even hitting the ball well, and they're beating teams with both pitching and batting, and the bats are hitting when they need to.
Tony,
when they need to.
You just said they're not hitting well, and they're the best team in baseball.
Bingo.
It's like Jumbo Shrimp.
No. I am proving that they are so good that the best team in baseball, even when the bats are cold.
Dang.
That's how good they are.
That, but that's fine. It's your show.
Look,
it's your take. And
Jim, here's the thing.
I'm just a co-host.
What did we say at the beginning of the year? We said, and this bit has gone on long enough, okay? We could have ended and started talking about March Madness 10 minutes ago.
I know, but we're amped up about the Phillies.
Yeah, there's something I need to push here. And I think you're forgetting the calculation that I'm making. And I'm no egghead. But here's the thing. I say every year we come in and we get really excited because this team looks really good. And they look really good. And I already know what's going to happen. Come September, they're going to be out of the playoffs by 4 games. And I'm not going to want to talk about the Phillies anymore. In fact, I'm going to bar it from the conversation on this program because it's my show, not yours. And so what am I going to do then? We're going to talk about some really bad Eagles team. And then to the fans' dismay, I'm going to then talk about St. Joe's basketball, which is still 2.5 months away in September. Okay? So what would you rather have, folks? Okay, and this is for all the listeners of Tony's Takes. Tony shows up with a little bit of hype. Tony shows up with a little bit of prep and pep in his step. Or do you want me to be realistic and say that this team, I got to wait till July? Well, we've got 4 months to talk about them. And if all I say every day is, let's wait till July before I make my announcement on what we think, you're going to tune out. Eric Franklin's not going to blow up the chat with his hot takes. And Jimmy is going to come in every Thursday dreading the conversation we're going to talk about.
I'm just saying, let's reel it in, Tony. That's all.
That can be your job.
I just think things aren't always as great as they seem, and things aren't always as bad as they seem. And I just think if this team fills in the gaps, then they will become the best team in baseball. I just don't think they are right now. I think there's better teams that are playing right now.
Eric responded to you saying, definitely not still Thor, but their second starter is currently Marcus Stroman, and even Syndergaard in decline. Fat Thor maybe is better than that. What encourages me about the Phillies is the late inning runs. Last year, they crushed starters. Then the offense died in the late innings, and I think it's because they knew the bullpen would blow it. So, and McCarthy said this on one of the games. He said that. He's like, you can tell the guys look a little more confident knowing that the bullpen has their back late game, that they don't have to manufacture 4 runs in the 7th inning or 7th, 8th, and 9th inning every game now.
Sure, and let's segue into that. I just want to highlight, that the bullpen, non-starters obviously, is highest average fastball velocity in the MLB. Jose Alvarado, Sam Coonrod, and Archie Bradley are our big 3, I like to put it right now. But you also have Connor Brogdon, and the whole rest of the bullpen averages 95.4 miles an hour on the fastball, which is the fastest in the MLB. And I get excited thinking about that, and that contributes to what you're saying about how the players feel like if the bullpen can keep them in it, they're going to win a lot of games, 95 games, like you said.
Evan Lehman goes, you got to keep the takes hot, hot, hot. Yeah, we will, Evan. Don't worry about it. This is Tony's Takes, greatest show in sports talk radio.
Nah, I like to keep mine lukewarm.
Yeah. Sheesh, I can't believe I got to sit next to you. Let's go. Okay, we're going to close out Phillies talk, but I want to say one more thing, Jim, and this is the power rankings. Okay. This is going to make you angry. If the previous bit didn't make you angry, this is going to make you angry. Folks, ESPN came out with the power rankings for pretty much the week. The season started last week on this Thursday, and they came up with power rankings this morning, and I read them, and I was kind of angry when I read them. But we're going to, drum roll please. Where is it? There it is. We're going to drum roll it. The Philadelphia Phillies, our beautiful team in burgundy and red and white and blue and whatever color they're wearing for the day, because Nike's just really doing the uniforms over the top. Our Phillies, yes, that's right, our Phillies are ranked 11th.
What?
11th.
Are you kidding me?
Guess where the Mets are ranked?
Don't tell me the Mets are ranked higher than us.
The Mets are ranked 6th, and they've gone 1 and 2. The
That doesn't
Atlanta
make any
Braves
sense.
are 2 and 4. We swept them.
This doesn't make any sense. Tony.
Hello? And the Nationals are 15th. They're not that far behind. I don't even know where the Marlins are. The Marlins are 22nd. They're 1 and 5. Imagine being 2 and 4 and you find yourself at the top. The tippity top of the mountain halfway up, as Dr. Disrespect says.
How can that even be possible?
I don't know. Who wrote this? What's his name?
Are they like a
Where do they
Metsapologist?
live? Tell me your face. It doesn't even say. It doesn't even say.
How do you watch the Mets just absolutely collapse against the Phillies the other night? The first game of the series.
The only one I like is Passon from ESPN for reporting. He's the only guy I trust. I don't want to read Schoenfield. This is what he said. The best early sign. The bullpen has been solid, other than the awful outing from Vince Velasquez. Yeah, you could have listened to Tony Stiggs. I would have told you that. The pen was historically awful in 2020. Everyone knows that. So there's nowhere to go but up. But Dave Dombrowski did add some power arms. If they throw strikes, it could be a solid group. Zach Wheeler was dominant. They added some power arms, then names none of them, and then goes, Zach Wheeler was dominant in his debut with 7 one-hit innings. And it's not an overreaction to suggest that he's a sleeper Cy Young candidate. Okay.
Sleeper?
He's got a sleeper Cy Young candidate.
He just had his
on the
best
team.
year ever last
We're
year.
5 and 1, and we're only 11th in the power rankings. You know what, Jim? Remind me. For the playoff seedings, do we go by power rankings or do we go by standings?
Go by standings.
And where are we in the standings?
Number uno in the NL East.
Don't forget it. Don't forget it. I'm going to be banging this drum all the way to town. Let's move on.
That just disgusts me.
Let's get you hyped up a little bit more, Jim. Joel Embiid returns.
Oh, yeah.
My man is back and better than ever. Yes.
Not initially.
Okay, well, not initially. They lost to the Grizzlies, but that was without him. But they go out and beat the Celtics. They beat the Celtics. They sweep the Celtics. What would Mike from Rhode Island say?
Mike from Rhode Island probably wouldn't say
Probably
anything.
worried about his really bad Red Sox.
Probably be crying in his
Sox.
bedroom with the door closed and his lights off. Be crying all night.
I'm sure he would disagree with that.
I don't know. 10-point loss to the Sixers.
We've swept them for the first time in years. I think since like the 70s.
The
No,
Celtics,
AI. No, the AI year.
The Celtics just aren't good this year. It's kind of sad. But.
So I grabbed in the write-up, Jim. I grabbed a clip from the Boston Globe. Do you want me to read it?
Yeah,
It's
read it.
funny. There is very few things I take enjoyment in this world. This finite world we live in. I only have so much time in the day. But one of the fun things I like to do, and I think Boston fans do it to us too, is read the local newspaper after a loss. So when the Celtics lose, I read the Boston Globe. There is nothing funnier than when they sulk about the Celtics. Everyone knows it's the team that's dear to them. It is. That's Boston's team. Some people say the Red Sox. I really think the Celtics are Boston's team. And when they lose, and when they cry, and when they complain, as they're sitting in TD Garden with their white tank tops on, or jerseys without shirts underneath, this is what I take pleasure in. Okay. This is Boston Globe, Dan Shaughnessy. I think that's the correct way to pronounce it. Boston versus Philadelphia has given us Bill Russell versus Wilt Chamberlain and Larry Bird versus Julius Erving. Tuesday at the Garden, we got Taco Fall versus Joel Embiid. Yikes. Embiid, with 35 points, and the conference-leading Sixers beat the Fool's Gold Celtics 106-96 at the Garden Tuesday to sweep the season series from the overrated back under 500 Green team. That was such an awkward way to put it. There was talk of a Celtic, quote, winning streak after victories over a horrible Houston and depleted Charlotte teams. But we should all know not to take the cheese on the Brad Stevens 5. Robert Williams got the start versus Embiid, 115 points in 3 games versus Boston this year. And his foul trouble led to Celtic trouble in the first half, with Williams on the pine and poor Luke Cornett getting ragdolled by Joel Embiid. Philly went on a 21-2 run, and Stevens called for Taco Fall to get his butt out there and guard Philadelphia's behemoth center. It's never a good sign when it's taco time in the first half against a team with a 35-16 record. I like that, taco time. The Sixers are legit now that Doc Rivers is calling the shots from the bench. Get that little dig in there, Brett Brown. And Embiid is Philly's new Chamberlain. Boston's Time Lord scored 4 points and fouled out in 14 minutes. Quote from Brad Stevens, my biggest concern coming into the game was Rob staying on the court. Embiid is a handful on the block. Summary, Embiid is just better. We're just better than you. Late in the fourth, former Celtic big man Kendrick Perkins dressed up and got out on the court. No. Watching from his home in Houston, tweeted, Joel Embiid is punishing the Celtics right now. I mean, straight daddy ball. Whatever that means. Note to Celtic fans who like to blame the officials. When the other team takes 21 more free throws, it does not mean you are getting jobbed by the refs. It means you are slow, lazy, and they are working harder than you. That just sounds like Philadelphia versus Boston any day of the week. Boston is slow, they are lazy, and we work harder than them. I continue. I'd be happy if the Celtics played the 76ers 82 times a year. It goes back to my childhood when Red Auerbach C's were champions every year. But this year, if we played you 82 times, we'd be champions every year. Celtics Sixers gave us Havlicek and stole the ball. Sixers gave us Havlicek stole the ball in the final moment of the 1965 Eastern Conference Finals. Those Sixers had Chamberlain, Hal Gear, and Chet Walker. In 1966, Reds' final season on the bench, Bill Russell overcame Wilt once again in the conference finals, beating the Sixers 4-1. I don't think it was the Sixers that year. I think this guy has it messed up. That's the Philadelphia Warriors.
Yeah.
1966?
I would say that's the Philadelphia Warriors.
Can you Google that and make
yeah,
sure you know the correct
I'll get
year?
I'll
Did
get
the
intern on
Boston
it.
Globe? Did the Boston Globe? I just figured this out. The Boston Globe got it wrong. It is a completely different organization. How can you get a column at the Boston Globe when you can't even get your number one rival's history correct? 1966, we're the Philadelphia Warriors playing out in Hershey, scoring 100-point games with Wilt the Stilt. The team you're listening to now is called the Syracuse Nationals. And you don't even know that? And you think you're a reporter?
No, Sixers from 63 to present.
Oh, now I'm the idiot.
Syracuse Nationals from 46 to 63.
I take it back. I take it back. He got it right. I was ready to pounce, though. I was ready to pounce on that guy.
Tony pounces.
I was ready for it. Are you kidding me? You get that wrong? You got it right. He got it right. Give him his credit. Give him his credit. I'm going to read the final line. Taco had a lengthy shift on Embiid in the third that ended with the visitors leading 85-70. It was 96-76 with 6 minutes left. Jason Tatum looked like he'd rather be anywhere other than the parquet floor. Boston committed 22 turnovers. It's hard to believe the Celtics swept these guys in the playoffs in August. Straight daddy ball. Don't even know what it means, but I love it. Jim, what were your thoughts after me reading that in such a dramatic fashion?
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
Oh, yes, how they've fallen.
Oh, I love it. I love when they're just they're
down
just weeping.
In despair, gnashing of teeth.
So many tears.
The exterior darkness.
It's it feels good to have that over the Celtics, and at the same time, we still have to think about if we're going to play them in the playoffs. So, there's
Jim. Okay, wait, hold on.
Tony, playoffs are different.
Dude, don't.
Playoffs are different,
no,
Tony.
No. Jim. Jim, you're so misguided.
I'm not, man.
Jim, you're just... I'm collecting... Folks, this dramatic pause, this shortness of breath.
History, man. History.
Jim comes in here rains on my Phillies parade. Which I hope it's not going to in October. It doesn't rain, so the parade that I'm thinking about, it's not going to rain during that parade.
Tony, tell the people what I'm wearing.
And the only parade it's going to rain, Jim. The only parade I'm going to let them rain on is when the Sixers are going down Broad Street late June. It's a misty, humid downpour before Joel Embiid breaks the clouds with some sunlight as the as the O'Brien Trophy comes down Broad Street. Those are the only times I'll let rain come on my parade. This Sixers team, there's no doubt that they're better than the Celtics. Don't even come in here with that. Fine, I got a little zeal when I'm talking about the Phillies. But I did now I'm doing the eye test, Jim. I have 20/20 vision. And this team is good. The only team I'm worried about is the Nets. And we could talk about them all day and how they might be better than the Sixers. Because LaMarcus Aldridge just scored 20 points, no problem. And he's supposed to be a bench player on a buyout. But the Celtics? Jim, Joel has scored 35 plus on this team every time. They don't have a center and there's no one in the buyout market. No one in the buyout market.
Tony, you knew exactly what type of show this was going to be when I came in wearing my Washington Nationals Bryce Harper t-shirt.
A bad one. A bad show.
You knew what kind of energy I was bringing.
Tiger energy.
Here's the thing. The Celtics against the Sixers in the playoffs in the last 5 years, how does that make you feel?
Good.
It makes you feel good.
We almost won a national title
when you think
the
about the
Raptors.
last 5 years against the Celtics. There was
okay,
one.
Last year was a absolute scratch of a year.
Okay.
That does not count. We took the two players off the team and we got better. We took the level of individual talent reduced on our team, and we got better.
Sure, this year.
Correct.
Okay, but I'm still thinking of the last 5 years about how Brad Stevens is like this savant of a coach.
Okay, what has Brad Stevens won? Seriously, what has he won?
How
many titles does he have?
He has owned the Sixers, and that's all I care about. I don't care about how many.
With Brett Brown as the coach.
Sure, yeah.
We have a variable change, Jim.
Which makes me positive about the playoffs. It doesn't mean I'm not worried.
It makes me braggadocious.
I'm allowed to have the nervous pit in my stomach that the Sixers aren't going to pull it off. It's the way that they've made me. It's PTSD from the last 5 years.
You're too much of a Philly fan, Jim.
You're too much of a Philly fan. I'm not allowed to feel nervous?
No.
I feel like you're too much of a Philly fan. You're just like overly confident.
No. Okay, well, I guess we're the two. There's two types of Philly fans, right? When they call into great shows like Tony's Takes. The one that says it's always bad, they're never going to get good, and we're always going to come in with despair and be upset.
I'm not there.
It sounds like you are.
I'm cautiously optimistic.
And then there's me, who says we're going to take on the world and we're going to win. And I think this team deserves a little bit of swagger.
I told you my takes come lukewarm.
And I'm tired of it, Jim. The whole point of us getting more people to follow the show is not for us to sit around here and go, yes, my calculations say that the 76ers are a second-round team in the NBA Finals, and I think that that's pretty accurate. Now, I'm not going to go too far from the standard deviation, and so I'm going to go that they are a second-round playoff team. Now, let's talk about free throw shooting percentage from the top of the key. This is one of the most inefficient shots in all of basketball, and so I think that the 76ers need to find their way closer to the rim.
Tony, we're in a year
This
where
is what I'm hearing.
The Hornets are the 4 seed right now.
The Hornets are the 4 seed, and I don't think that that's an accurate depiction of what that team can really possibly be.
It's a weird year and things can happen. I'm still going to be nervous until the Sixers go up on the Celtics 3-1 in the series. I need that to happen.
I can't do the voice to you anymore, Jim. I'm going to make you upset. I'm going to cry. I can't make fun of you this much.
I'm just not ready to go and just say that we're just going to crush everybody because...
Okay, let me do it for you. Hold on. You sit right there. I'm going to mute your mic. We are going to crush the Boston Celtics. I don't care what team you put in front of the 76ers team. If you are a 76ers fan, and you're not going to hear this at other radio stations. No, you're not. Folks, you're not going to hear this at other radio stations. Jim, I'm doing my best AM talk radio impersonation, okay? Folks, you're not going to hear this at any other radio station. You're not going to hear this at 97.5 The Fanatic. You're not going to hear this at 94 WIP. Why? Why aren't you going to hear it? Well, because they don't think outside the box. They aren't different thinkers. They're the same people who go up there every day and they get in the minutia and they worry about every other game because that's all they do and that's all they care about. What did the Sixers do tonight? What did they do tomorrow night? What are they doing tonight? They can't step back and see the entire picture for what it is. They can't see the painting that's in front of them. As that stupid saying goes, you're feeling the elephant's butt, but you can't see its whole body. And I'm feeling the trunk and the tusk or whatever, and I don't see the butt of the elephant. That's what the Philadelphia media is. But I, a stable genius, take a step back. And I can see that everything that the Philadelphia 76ers are, great defensive team, all-star level coach, great defender in Ben Simmons, the best defender in basketball in Ben Simmons. I think Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are the two best defenders in basketball. And the Toronto Raptors showed us that good defense gets you there, will make you win. And I can trust no one else but Joel Embiid at the end of a game to hit the shot because he's the best player in basketball right now. Nikola Jokic, give him the MVP. That way my guy Joel Embiid can focus on what really matters most. That's winning an NBA title. No one else cares about that. The Denver Nuggets are not someone who I am scared of. The Los Angeles Lakers are so injured, I don't really care. And quite frankly, the Nets, who knows if Kevin Durant can stay healthy? It is a question mark. This Sixers team, it's now or never. And there's going to be a buyout guy who shows up. There has to be a buyout guy who shows up. This team is too good, and if anyone else tells you otherwise, they're foolish, they don't know what they're talking about, or they're afraid to put their name next to the commitment that is, I think this team is a championship team. There, I said I did it for you.
There's no doubt about it that I think that the Sixers are going to beat the Celtics if they play them in the playoffs. There's no doubt that I think that that's going to happen. I'm just saying I want to see it happen before my eyes, and I'm allowed to be nervous going into it. But let's forget about all that and let's move forward to the Nets because that's what the conversation really comes down to. Because that's who it's going to be: Sixers versus the Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals.
This is true.
I believe that just as much as you do. So again, you mentioned Kevin Durant. Is he going to stay healthy? He's coming back, or he's begun his return. But James Harden has a hamstring injury now. That's 10 days that he's going to be out for.
And that's unlike him. He's very durable.
And the thing about hamstring injuries is they linger, especially when you're in the midst of your season and you're trying. So basically, you're going through active recovery the whole time. You're not taking any days off. You're still playing your games, or if you're not playing your games, you're doing like PT throughout the whole thing. Well, the thing about hamstrings is basically you need to just stop doing everything if you really want that hamstring to heal perfectly.
For those who don't know, when you yank your hamstring, you're literally like pulling it, and you got to wait for it. It's like a rubber band. You're waiting for it to return to its normal state.
Exactly. So he's going to have issues, and he's probably not even going to feel right when he comes back. Like if he comes back in 10 days, he's going to be running down the court and not feeling right in his leg because it just feels awkward, and it feels like it's like a sting the whole time when he's running. So that changes his the way that he can jump and shoot and just play the entire game. So unless he's just completely taking off for 10 days, which I doubt that he is because he's a professional athlete, James Harden is not going to be 100%, at least not until the season's over.
And we don't know if Kevin Durant's 100%. And then I'm going to flip it to the Lakers. The high ankle sprain for LeBron. I don't think folks know this either. It apparently feels like you broke your leg. That's the kind of feeling you have.
Oh, geez.
And it's a sprain that doesn't go away easily. And so you run around, and it's not like So when you roll your ankle and you can kind of recover from it after a couple minutes is when you roll it outside. But what happened to LeBron was it got pushed inside. And that's just not a normal roll that the human body is not usually ready for.
It's like the Saquon Barkley high ankle sprain that he went through.
Yes. And it feels like your leg's broken. And so I don't think the Lakers are a factor.
And if you recall, Saquon Barkley had a tough time coming back from that.
He's still not back from various leg injuries, but yeah, correct.
So there you go. I mean, it's really wide open for the Sixers. And I think, again, cautiously optimistic, they can do this, but I have to see it happen before my eyes,
Yes, I agree. Jim, let's move on to March Madness. Baylor wins the national championship. Give me your... I want to talk about something else with college basketball, but give me your quick take on March Madness.
Quick take is normally the team that looks the most athletic wins it and plays the most athletically and aggressively. Part of the way through the bracket or through the tournament, Baylor started looking like the most athletic team on the courts. When they took down Villanova, before the Villanova game, I didn't even think that Villanova had a chance because I thought Baylor was really just so much better. They could rebound. They could do everything. And as it just kept getting closer and closer, I started getting worried about this Gonzaga team. And I still thought Gonzaga was going to win it. We both predicted Gonzaga to win it in our brackets when we did it a couple weeks ago. And lo and behold, Gonzaga lays an egg. And I don't know if Gonzaga, maybe they just had the, what's it called? The yips? Yeah, the yips.
The yips.
Yeah, I thought maybe they had the yips because they're like, oh man, we're finally going to do it. 2017 is behind us. Like, this is us. And I think they might have just fell apart right in the biggest game that they had.
They looked like they were. I mean, I agree with your point. Athletic teams do well, but Gonzaga looked athletic. They didn't look like they were slow. You watched them against other teams; they ran the court really well. You know what they looked like? They looked like a team that was fast, but that controlled the ball. They weren't out of control when they played, and that's what made Gonzaga really interesting for me. Was that they moved the ball really well. They were physically bigger than most teams. And they could run fast. They weren't slow. They're not slow. They had some fast players, and they were always controlled when they did it. It was never like UCLA felt like, oh, they might turn the ball over. Like,
yeah,
you just don't know what's going to happen with this team. They're good, but it's just like they play at 110 miles an hour, and Gonzaga plays at 95. But would I rather go 110 in a Camry or 95 in a Porsche? Like, I'm going to feel a lot more controlled and comfortable at a pace that's pretty fast and make less mistakes.
Yeah, I like that analogy a lot. And another thing that you kind of touched on there was the UCLA game against Gonzaga kind of made you feel like Gonzaga had a weakness. That game right there where it comes down to a 3-point shot in overtime it shouldn't have gotten off to begin with. It could have been UCLA in that game. And honestly, it might have been a better game if it was UCLA versus Baylor.
UCLA... they are the talk of the tournament in the sense that's the run. They were 11 seed. They're a very historic program, and it was good. It's good for basketball when they're playing well.
Is that the highest seed to make a Final Four?
It might be,
or
might be one of them.
Close to it,
at least in recent year.
Yeah, that's
memory. I mean,
it was awesome to see that game. That I really think that the Gonzaga UCLA game was probably the best game of the tournament to watch. As far as excitement and who's going to make it to the championship and. It feels like every once in a while, March Madness, the Final Four is even better than the championship because making it to the championship seems like a bigger deal than actually winning it sometimes.
Yeah, I agree.
Sometimes, and especially this year.
Mm-hmm. It was a good, the one thing I'm going to take away from March Madness, I'm glad it's back. I'm glad it was back. I'm glad that we were able to watch it, and I can't wait to watch St. Joe's in it next year.
It didn't feel 100% though this year. Like it was awesome to watch.
No, I agree.
Something was still off.
Compared to last year, at least it was on.
Yeah.
And I think that, especially the first 3 days or 4 days, it did feel like, okay, the round of 64, the round of 32, there were some upsets. We noted it. It was big games. I think those were good, but I think and I know and agree that in the later rounds, it kind of felt a little less reliable, a little less entertaining. And I think that's because there weren't as many fans in the stadium.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's 100% what it was.
So hopefully next year, I know they will bring fans back into the stadium. And I think basketball will be as good as what we want it to be. And I can't wait to go next year as well. To the A10 tournament, at least.
Oh, yeah.
So
can't wait to watch the Hawks.
I can't wait for the Hawks. Hawks are going to be good. They're going to be really good. Okay, so Jim, I'm going to close out the show with this. There are 1,200 student for Division I basketball. Let me rephrase it. For Division I basketball, there are 1,250 athletes in the transfer portal. Okay, there are only 300 Division I basketball teams. And each roster carries around 16 players. The math comes out to around 5,000 people. And the average turnover rate, according to the Wall Street Journal, at a normal corporation, it's about 15%. If 1,200 student athletes for Division I basketball are in the transfer portal out of 5,000, that's roughly around 22%. The average corporation has a turnover of 15 to be considered healthy. college basketball has 22% turnover at all their programs. That is simply unsustainable. You cannot have 1/5, even a little bit more than 1/5 of the athlete population moving around college basketball all at once. The teams that do, and this especially is true for mid-major, smaller programs. Yes, you're going to go, Tony, Calipari does it all the time with no players. Yes, this is true. He does. But he's Kentucky, and he gets the number one guy in the recruiting class every year. St. Joe's doesn't get that. They get their number one guy, their best player they get their best player once every 5 years, if they're lucky. DeAndre Bembry, St. Joe's waits. Charlie Brown looks promising and doesn't turn out to be as good. Kimball's okay, but he's not as good as Bembry. Now we have Jordan Hall. And that was about 5 years, maybe even 6. It takes smaller programs a longer time to get there. And if half your program or 1/5 of your team is transferring all the time, and your little St. Joe's or your LaSalle or your Delaware or your William & Mary, that affects you. Imagine if you have a good player at William & Mary who's going to be an average player at St. Joe's and he decides to leave to join St. Joe's. I understand people who go, well, I understand. I don't agree, but I understand people who go, student athletes are just like regular students and they should be allowed to transfer whenever they want. Yes, they are students. They're not like your normal student. One, to think that a student athlete is the same as a regular student would be a lie. You're lying to yourself. Jim and I can attest to this. Student athletes are held to higher standards, but they also get more benefits. They are a different type of student. They are not the same as a regular student, and that's okay. Not everyone is going to be completely equal in this world. And from this standpoint, student athletes, they have a duty and responsibility to perform and meet certain requirements for the school, just like the school has certain duties, responsibilities, and requirements to meet to their players over the average student. Why is that? Student athletes are making money for the program through winning competitions. The NCAA gives out money, grant money based on athletic performance sometimes. And student athletes are required you can't get in trouble like the average student. You are held to a higher standard. You could be removed from the school. You can have your scholarship removed. There's much more at stake if you mess up from a personal standpoint outside of the sport world, and that's not even including your expectations on the field. It hurts you way more as a student athlete. There are different duties and responsibilities towards one another, and to think otherwise would be foolish, and you would be lying to yourself.
Tony, let's not forget that when a coach recruits an athlete and they give them a scholarship,
there's a promissory.
The promise is that that athlete is going to be there for the 4 years to play on that team. Now, if they enter into the NBA draft or whatever, that's a different story.
Yep, that is completely different. Do not equate the same. I'm not equating those two things. I'm talking about transfers, not people going pro. That's their own risk, and they are allowed to do it, just like you're allowed to drop out of school. They're not going to hold you there like a prisoner.
Exactly. Yeah, if they go into the NBA, they're abandoning the contract. They're not a student anymore, and that's totally different. But if they're going to transfer to a different school when the promise was that they were going to be there for 4 years to play the sport, well, that's kind of breaking the contract, and I don't know. I understand coaches' reservations to allowing athletes to transfer because of that.
And that's what my point is. We can't just go, student athletes should have all the freedom in the world. No, because we got to look at the whole picture and understand that just like a coach is promising to give you your scholarship, you are promising that you are going to play for him. And you're an adult, you're 18, and you've made a decision. And you need to stand by your decision. You're legally adult. You signed the contract. It's legally binding. And now I understand some people go, well, some players get literally hostage to a coach. They're not going to play at all. The coach holds them hostage so he can't be a threat to them against another program. And so this player wastes his time not being able to play. I understand that. That's a legitimate concern.
Sure.
You shouldn't be allowed to hold a player hostage because you just don't want him to play.
Yeah.
Like that's also not okay, right? We got to understand that there's responsibilities on both ends. And so, Jim, I brought this whole thing up. I just want all those clarifications made because I'm going to write a piece at A10 Talk, and I wanted to put some feelers out for everyone. I have a few solutions. And some of these solutions favor players. Some of these solutions favor coaches. But and they're not my final solutions. I have more in my brain, but these were a couple that I put out on a Twitter poll. And you could have seen it if you followed us at @Tonys_takes. But each one of them are different, and they're a different way of attacking this problem. So, Jim, let me read them to you. And I'll tell you which one's the winner as well. Unofficial poll. What is the best solution for the NCAA transfer portal? Here are the few ideas I have. 1, allow unlimited transfers. So this option pretty much gives the players all the power. Unlimited transfers. 2, allow one transfer, only one, but you get to pick any school of your choice, even interconference. You get one choice. You make a promissory. Something, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. It's not working out at this program. You get one more shot to transfer, but after that, no more. However, we're not going to restrict where you go. The final one is pay student athletes. And by student athletes, I mean revenue generating sports. It's impossible to pay. I'm not going to pay Jim to run track and field. I'm sorry, Jim, but it's just not going to happen. Jim shook his head. He wants that money.
I'll take that A10 championship back.
Okay. Yeah. Pay the athlete, but they're not allowed to transfer. You're getting too much money to be able to transfer anywhere. You got to stick with the team that you made your promise. Now, Jim, not looking at it, which one do you think was the one that the people selected?
The one that I like is the middle one. Obviously, the middle ground always seems like the better option than to just give power all one side. So I'm going to say that's probably what
that was the most popular.
Yeah.
And I really do think that's the best option that the NCAA could go forward with. No sitting out a year, no rules or regulations around it, but you only get one. You don't get to transfer again.
I don't like the whole sitting out a year because the coach didn't approve it or anything. I don't think that coaches should have that power, especially for somebody like somebody's fifth year that they're going into because they were injured or something. I don't really like that. I don't like that the coach has that ability to just deny the transfer or whatever it is, whatever the actual term is.
Yeah, and at least when you get a guy as a transfer, you know, he's not going to leave in another year.
Sure.
Because that's happening right now. Guy transfers in and then he leaves right after. No mercenaries. We got to build. What made college basketball great was you get a call from a guy 10 years older than you, but it's all part of the program.
And to force somebody to sit out the next year. So take Daly for instance, when he came over from Delaware. Like if he sat out the next year because the coach didn't let him, then that means he's going to have to go to another year of school, no matter what, if he wants to play 4 years of basketball. And I don't like that. I don't like that you're basically forcing this kid. If he wants to play basketball and he was originally signed up for 4 years, now he has to take a fifth year out of debt. I don't know. Or to pay for school, he has to pay another fifth year, whatever.
Those guys aren't paying.
I know, but theoretically, in some way, somebody could be paying an extra year because of that. And
this is true.
I don't like that.
And I mean, if we had implemented the second rule, the one where you get to transfer but only get one, Ryan Daly would be at St. Joe's and he could have saved Phil Martelli's job.
Yeah.
Like legit, he would have saved Phil Martelli's job with Kimball, Charlie Brown, and Ryan Daly together. That's a team that, you know, they win the A10 tournament with the way that we saw Ryan Daly play.
Yeah, I don't like that rule at all. I don't get it, but
it's funny, man. Funny how it all works out. Okay, Jim, that wraps up today's show. And folks, I'm going to write an article about that and I'll make sure to tweet that out. And if you want to see us tweet it out, make sure to follow us at Tonys_takes. Also, we didn't get any mailbag questions, but if you want your takes read in the mailbag or want us to read it out of the mailbag, submit it to tonystakes.1851@gmail.com. That's tonystakes.1851@gmail.com. Finally, if you're listening to us on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and double-click the notification bell. We go live every Thursday at 7 o'clock, and we would hate for you to miss a live episode of Tony's Takes. That's when you get to interact with us. That's when you get to tell us what you're thinking in regards to whatever sport you want us to mention or discuss. And so please subscribe to us on YouTube and double click the notification bell. Also, all these shows go up on Apple Podcasts. Search Tony's Takes. You'll see the beautiful logo that you're so familiar with. And you can listen to the recorded version of this show. Of course, you don't get to interact with us on the recorded version, but you do get to leave a 5-star review. If you leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and it's a written review, we will read it out loud on the show. That's a Tony guarantee. Jim, thanks for coming on the show. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you to all who listened to today's episode of Tony's Takes. We really do appreciate it. We look forward to seeing everyone right here on YouTube next week, 7 o'clock. You know the time. You've been listening to Tony's Takes.
The premier sports talk radio, it's Tony's Takes.
Here we go.